It's World Book Day! Now, I hope you've all listened to our World Book Day story, Ruby's Worry. And what a brilliant story it is. It's got some fantastic illustrations that we're going to use as inspiration for our art lesson this morning. Now, in our art lesson today, we are going to be using watercolour paints. And you should have a set of watercolour paints in your home learning pack. Now, for the next few minutes, you don't need any paints, you don't need any water, you just need to have a listen so you know what kind of paints you're using and how to use them. Because normally in school, we often use what we call poster paint. And poster paint looks like these paints here. Often they just come in a standard primary or secondary colour. Here I've got some green, yellow, red. They come in a big tub. You've seen them in your class that look like this. And they're very easy to use. We just stick our paintbrush in them and we can draw and paint some nice bright colours. We can change the colour and get some red on here, and they're very strong colours. Our poster paint is nice and easy to use. That's why we use it in school, especially when you're in reception. Poster paint makes very strong colours, and the colours are what we call very vivid and bright. So those are our poster paints. Now, we can mix the colours of the poster paints to make new colours, and we know how to mix colours. But because the poster paints only come in a few different colours, we'd have to do a lot of mixing to make all the different colours. Our watercolours, on the other hand, you can see in our pack, your pack looks about the same as mine. They come in lots of different colours and lots of different shades. And they're a bit easier to mix together to make even more colours. Now, watercolours, as the name suggests, need some water on them. So if I didn't have water, if I had a completely dry paintbrush and I tried to paint with it, still a bit of water on there, it would be, see how it's not really working? Little bit, but not really working. So you need to add water to get watercolours to work. So let's see. A little bit of water on there. Here's my red. Can you see that this red are slightly different in tone? Here we go, it's a bit more red. This red's a little bit softer. It's almost pink, actually. And then let's have a look at our green so we can compare. So here's some green. Oh, that's a different green. Let me get a different colour green. I've got two greens in this set. Here's another green. So you can see that these colours are not as strong and they are not as vivid. Some people might say that these colours, these paint, is quite soft in colour and makes quite a delicate colour. So we might use poster paint for some reasons, if we want a very strong and vivid painting, and we might use watercolours for another reason, if we want something to be soft and delicate. Here's an example. I painted two flowers. I painted one in poster paint and I pasted one in watercolour. Now the poster paint one, it's quite vivid and strong, and here's my watercolour one. It's quite soft. This one for a flower might be a little bit more realistic because I've got a bit more detail on there. We know that a leaf is not just one colour green. There's a mix of green, loads of greens in a leaf, and there's loads of yellows and oranges and reds in the petals on a flower. So watercolours can help your painting be a little bit more like real life, a bit more realistic. Today, we're going to be using our watercolour paints, and we are going to be learning about something called tinting. Tinting is when you add white to a colour to make it lighter. Now, in my watercolour set, I do have a white paint. It's quite a big block there. And you probably have white in your set as well. But the clever thing about watercolour and painting on white paper is that the page is white. And we can use the white of the page to tint our colour and make it lighter. Let me show you. If I started, let's start with this nice blue colour. Okay, here's some blue. Let me get a bit more paint on there so you can see my blue. Yeah? Now, if I wanted to make my paint lighter, I don't need to add white paint. I can add water, and this helps me use the white of the page. I'm going to add a bit more water, and the paint will get lighter. Can you see how it's turned into a light blue? So I'm using the white of the page. I don't need to add white paint. I can add water, which means there's less paint, and it makes it tinted white. Let's have another look at another colour. Let's go with red. So I've got a little bit of water on my paintbrush just so the watercolour works. Here's my red with lots of paint. And now I'm going to add a little bit of water to make it lighter. I'm going to use my palette just here to add even more water and make it even lighter. It's actually turning pink because pink is a tint of red. I'm going to add even more water and make it even lighter. Can you see how my red got lighter and actually turned to pink? Because I was adding more and more white by using the white of the page. So today we're going to be focusing on just using one colour in our painting, but tinting it and using the water to make some light and some dark, make our colours stronger and make our colours whiter. Now I've got one warning. You have to be careful because look what happened earlier. When you use too much water on your page, and if you scrub it with the paintbrush and you're too rough, you make a hole in the page. Uh-oh. So you do have to be careful with watercolours. In your home learning pack, we've given you a piece of card so it's not as thin and we can avoid doing that. But as you use the water, just be careful. If the paper starts to flake off and you start to get these bobbly bits, don't keep going because you will scrub a hole in your page. All right, let's get painting. You should have in front of you one piece of card from your home learning pack, some crayons, any colour, and a pencil. Your watercolour paints, your paintbrush, and you'll need a pot of water, cup of water, and some tissue, any tissue at all, just in case you spill any water and to help dry off your paintbrush. Now, before we get started painting, a reminder that today we are going to be practicing our tinting. Tinting is adding white to a colour to make it lighter. So I've just had a quick practice of some tinting here where we're using the white of the paper. So instead of let's get painting. You're going to need your piece of A4 card, some crayons, a pencil, your watercolour paints, your paintbrush and a pot of water and some tissue just in case you spill anything or to dry off your paintbrush. All of this, apart from the cup of water, should be in your home learning pack. Now, earlier we talked about tinting, and a reminder that tinting is when we add white to a colour to make it lighter. We make it a different tint. Now, with watercolour, instead of adding white paint, we use the white of the paper. So we add water so we can use the white of the paper to tint it. So here I've got my blue getting lighter and lighter. And here is our black adding white. So we're adding water using the paper. It's getting greyer and greyer and greyer until it gets almost to white down here. So this is our tinting using watercolours. Just today, we're actually just going to be using one colour for our tinting. We're actually going to be using black. So just a reminder, I'm going to get some black paint. I've put a little bit of water on my paintbrush because watercolours need it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get some paint. Now I'm actually going to use the lid of my watercolour paint. That lid is there so you can use it. You can put paint on it. Can you see that? It's almost like the paint disappears. I'm going to get a bit more and put it on there. And even a little bit more. Get some more. Yeah, this is what we call our palette. The lid becomes a palette. Okay, there's my black paint. I put a bit on there. And let's just check. It's definitely black. Definitely black. Now I'm going to add, not white tint it, I'm going to add some water. I've got a little bit of water and I'm going to mix it in on my palette. See? Is it getting lighter? A little bit lighter. Let's add a bit more water and see if it gets lighter. It's getting a little bit lighter and a tint of black is becoming grey. So it's gone black, it's gone a little bit lighter. I'm going to add a bit more water here. I'm using my palette to add the water. If I put my paintbrush back in here, I'm going to end up adding more black. That's not tinting, that's shade. So here we go. It's getting greyer. Can you see it getting lighter? And if I kept going and kept going, eventually it almost becomes white. It gets lighter and lighter grey. Bit more water. Till it almost becomes white. So grey is actually a tint of black. Black plus white is our grey. Now, it is World Book Day, one of my favourite days of the year. And we have read the book Ruby's Worry. Today we're going to use the pictures from Ruby's Worry as inspiration for our own painting. Here's Ruby and her worry. The background is all grey, whites and greys and blacks, and a very colourful worry, because Ruby can't stop thinking about that worry. It stands out the most. Let's have a look at another picture from the story. Here she is in her classroom. Greys and whites and blacks, and one very bright worry. And here's a picture in particular I'm going to be using today. This is Ruby at the park before she meets the little boy. We've got the park in the background, the trees and the clouds and the sky. And we've actually, on this picture, got two very bright worries. I use this picture to help me paint my own. And here's one that I painted this morning. Here's my grey background in the park. I've got a bench, and on my bench is sat my worry. I chose a red worry. So today I'm going to help you paint a picture just like this. Step number 1, I'm going to take my piece of card and I'm going to fold it in half horizontally this way and open it back up. I've folded it horizontally and now I've got a line in the middle. This line in a painting is our horizon line, a horizontal line on the horizon. Just going to make sure I know where that is. And a horizon line makes it clear this is going to be the sky and this is going to be the ground. Where the sky meets the ground is the horizon. Now I also need to draw on this background some outline of a couple of things that I want to make sure I don't paint. So I'm going to draw my cloud to keep my cloud white. I'm going to do a straight line. And I'm going to do my bumpy cloud. One cloud. And I'm going to draw some trees. Now, the trees in our story are quite round, so I'm going to use that design in my painting. So I'm going to draw some circles, different size circles, and maybe a couple of ovals. I'll put one there behind, and I'm going to draw my tree trunks. Just nice and lightly. These are just lines to help you so we don't paint over these parts. The rest of it, I'm going to paint. Pause your video now while you fold your paper in half to get your horizon line. Draw the cloud and some trees on the horizon. Right, now we're ready to get painting. I'm going to paint my ground first, and I'm going to use my tinting. So I'm going to get ready, and I'm going to make sure there's plenty of black on my palette. Okay, see how I'm not adding more water yet, because I do want it to be black. And I'm just using the end of my palette, so then if I wanted to paint another colour later, I can. Don't need the whole palette for this. Right, black on my paintbrush. And I'm going to draw one line across the horizon on the ground. Nice thick line. See that one? Do a bit of tinting. Let's make it a bit grayer. Bit of water. Mix it up. All the way across. Now remember, before we mentioned, you have to be careful. Don't scrub it back and forth, because you may end up scrubbing a hole in your page. So you have to very gently, a bit more water. Let's do a bit more tinting. Gently wipe it all the way across, all the way back. Let's do another thick one. All the way across, all the way back. Fantastic. Bit more water. Getting down to very light grey by the bottom. Tinted it using the white of the page. All the way back. Fantastic. Look how quickly I painted that ground, and it's starting more at black or a dark grey all the way down. That's our ground painted. Now, I want to paint my sky, and I'm going to keep the grey that I've already got in my palette to paint the sky. And I'm just going to avoid painting the clouds and the trees. I want to leave them white for the moment. So, watch me, and you can do yours in a second. I'm going to paint across. I'm going to stop at the tree. So I'm still going in lines. I'm not going to do any circles or wavy parts. I'm still going across the page, but I'm going to avoid the clouds and the trees. If you go on it a little bit, it's no big deal. The outline's just there to help you. So I'm going to fill in these parts now. Across the page, trying to stop at my trees, fill in these little gaps. Just roughly. It's all right if you go in the lines a little bit. There we go. Fantastic. So we do have a very grey background. It looks a bit sad. And I think that's a good reflection of how Ruby's feeling and the illustrations in the book. Now we've done the background. This is most of the pages now covered in colour. I've got my sky, my horizon line, and my ground. Now we can add a bit more black to add the features. Before I start just painting, I'm going to get my pencil back and I'm going to draw a bench on here. Now, benches can be a bit tricky to draw, so let me show you a tip. First thing, I'm going to draw a big rectangle. See my rectangle? Doesn't have to be perfect. Now, from this corner, I'm going to draw a line, a diagonal line at an angle. See that one? And from this corner, I'm going to draw a diagonal line and I'm going to join them up. There's my bench. There's my seat. It needs some legs. There's one behind there as well. There's my bench. Just a rough outline to help me do my painting. And because my picture might look a bit boring, I'm going to draw some bushes on the horizon line. There we go. There's one there. Some bumpy bushes. One there. I'm even going to put one in the corner here. So I've picked up my pencil and I've drawn some extra features that I'm now going to paint. Pause the video, pick up your pencil and draw your bench and the bushes so you're ready for painting the next part. Okay, so now I've got all the features on there and you're ready to paint them. So some of these are going to be painted a little bit darker. Your paper by now should be dry. If it's not dry, pause the video and wait, because if you keep adding more and more paint to it, again, you probably end up with a hole in your page, and that's not a good idea. All right, black. I'm going to go a bit darker this time, so I'm going to get some black, a bit more black, and probably not really add too much water to it. I don't need to tint this colour. I just want it to be quite dark. And I'm going to fill in my bench. Spread it around. There's enough paint on my paintbrush. I don't need any more. And paint the bottom. Paint the legs. It's my bench and my bushes. See how I haven't actually needed any more paint from my palette yet. It's still on my paintbrush. It's my bushes on the horizon. Might get a bit more now. Starting to get a bit dry. The bushes on the horizon. This one here. We go. A few more features on there. Pause the video while you paint your bench and your bushes. Okay, the last thing I'm going to paint is the trees. I am going to make the trees a different tint to the bench, just so they stand out. So I'm going to try and make them a bit more grey. So I'm going to get some black, but also add some water to it. There we go. More of a grey, that one. I might make this one a little bit darker. Add some black to it, some shade. Oh, that one's quite wet. Definitely don't need more on my paintbrush. Our painting for now is all done. But the great news is that watercolour set you've got at home, that you got in your home learning pack, and your crayons, they're all yours to keep. So although we only used black in your paint set today, you can carry on using the paints for as long as you like and paint me some brilliant pictures. The final thing we need to add to our painting is our worry. Now, I did a red worry earlier to practice. I think I'm going to do a yellow worry, just like Ruby's. Your painting should be dry. Again, if it's not dry, pause the video and wait. Now, the worry is easy to draw because it's just one big squiggly mess. It's going to sit on my bench and it's going to be one big squiggly mess. You can make yours as big or as small as you like. Here's my worry. Pause the video while you add your worry. Now, your worry needs, just like in the book, all these worries seem to have one big eyebrow. I'm going to use my black crayon, or if you don't have a black crayon, use your pencil to do one big stripe across his head as an eyebrow, and I'm going to add 2 eyes. There's my worry sat on the bench. The final thing I want to do to our painting, just to finish it all off, is I'm going to add a little bit of detail just using my pencil. You can see from our illustration in the book, there's lots of little bits and pieces out in the park. Some grass, some leaves, some detail on the trees. Let me show you how I add it to mine so you can do it to yours. I'm going to make the outline of my cloud a little bit stronger. So I'm just going to go back over the cloud outline. I am going to put a little bit of detail on the tree trunk. So I'm just going to put some lines. Trees aren't smooth, are they? They've got bark on them. Just some lines on those trees. You see that? They've also got branches in them. Add some branches. They look a little bit more like trees, don't they? Not just grey circles. Add some branches in here. Don't have to be perfect. They make a difference. I'm going to add some little patches of grass, especially around the feet of this bench. The grass always gets away growing around here. It's hard to cut. It gets a bit longer. Put some little plants poking through on the ground. Maybe some buds of some crocuses. Outline around this one here. And maybe add some leaves to the bush. Not sure you can see that on the camera, but it makes a difference to my painting. A couple of birds in the sky. Fantastic. I have a little bit of grass on the horizon in the park. There's always little bits of tufts of grass growing out. Fantastic. You can add whichever detail you like to your painting. Today, you've been practicing tinting and using black and grey to create a picture just like in Ruby's Worry. Well done. You guys have done some fantastic art today. I wonder if you can make some illustrations for your other books.